OMG, this one really likes a drink. Hi, my name's Kirsten, and today I want to talk about two melanochrysums struggle against arid conditions and terrible clumsiness. Okay, they are not struggling at all. In fact, they're doing really well, but they are in less than ideal conditions. And so today I would like to share a few tips and tricks I have for looking after them and getting the best out of them, and some mistakes that I've made and how to not make them yourself. Now you might see that mine has weirdly different sized leaves, and that is because there's two plants in here. So there's this one with the smaller leaves that I've had since this leaf, and it's sized up its leaves. And then as you can see here, tragedy struck, which we will talk about in a bit. And then I had this larger one here, which came with this leaf and a slightly smaller leaf that's too difficult to get to in there. This was coming out at the time, and there's a new growth point back here, which I'll probably take some B-reel of, and that has been there for months and not done anything. So that's strange. Just jumping in here to say that the growth point almost immediately activated a new leaf after I made that video, and here it is. It's been out a few days now, so it's started to turn copper, and it's still very soft though, so I estimate that it'll grow another like 7 centimeters or so, which is excellent. And I would say that the lack of growth that I had for the last few months was just down to winter basically. And so now that spring has definitely sprung, we are back in business. Now, one of the problems with the Philodendron melanochrysum, particularly if you're a clumsy person such as myself, is that it gets quite kind of top heavy as it vines up. I think it's quite a fast grower when it decides to be, because of the size of the leaves and just the way it is. If you don't secure it onto something like a moss pole or a plank or something really sturdy quite quickly, you're going to have accidents, which is exactly what happened here. There was supposed to be a leaf here, and it had come out and it was beautiful, and it was at that lovely pink stage just before it goes copper, and the plant fell and I knocked the leaf off and I cried a little bit. And then it grew this leaf, and it was kind of winter, so it was a little bit smaller. Also, I think it was trying to punish me for what I did to it here, so it gave me a smaller leaf, although it is a good leaf, let's be fair, it's a pretty good leaf. And then we have here behind here another leaf that I broke, because I did actually have it on the shelf behind me. I didn't even notice it was growing because it was growing behind this, and this new growth point hit the ceiling and tore. So it's unraveling, but I feel like I'm probably going to lose this leaf. Oh, sad times, man. Yeah, just an FYI and a take home from this. These plants fall over really easily. You need to put them in a very safe place. It has now been put in a very secure, heavy pot and is against the wall in an area that I cannot kick it over or knock it over. I'm not going to speak too soon. Now, despite all the accidents, this is actually one of my favourite ones to grow. When it gets sort of any light near it, it twinkles and sparkles back like a twilight vampire. It's epic. It's got these very dark velvety leaves, and because of the velvet over this very extreme dark, sometimes almost black looking leaf, that's what creates this like fantastic effect of shimmering. It's so beautiful. The name melanochrysum actually breaks down to melano, which means dark or black, and chrysum, which means like gold or shimmering, and it's aptly named, right? It's native to the foothills of the Colombian rainforest, but it's actually been in cultivation all over the world since the late 1800s, and that's actually because it's one of the easier philodendron to grow outside of its natural conditions. And if you look at its appearance, its leaves are basically an instruction manual for what it wants and how it wants to be cared for. And I'm just going to go through that now. The velvety effect of these leaves is actually caused by tiny little hairs on the leaf surface, which perform a number of functions. First and foremost is to protect it from the sun and transpiration of the leaves, basically transpiration of water. The shimmering effect that you see is actually the light bouncing off it away from the leaf surface, and that's what stops sort of transpiration and prevents excessive water loss essentially. So when you're seeing that effect on your leaves, you know that this plant is trying to protect itself like that. It's designed itself to protect itself from the light. They grow up trees, they are naturally shaded, they get a bit of dappled light maybe throughout the day, they will get little bits of full sun as the sun passes over the leaves of the tree that it's climbing, but it will be very minimal and it will be dappled, and it'll be mainly indirect light that it's getting, ambient light from the rainforest. And that's really what you want to recreate so that it doesn't actually get damaged. The dark green of the leaf means that it's actually got a lot of chlorophyll in there, meaning that it can photosynthesize really easily. But it also means that that dark green absorbs a lot of light again, which is why it needs these tiny hairs to bounce that light away as much as possible. But with the color of these leaves, it's doing a very ineffectual job. You know, it's trying its hardest, and in its natural conditions that's absolutely fine. The leaves are quite stiff, but they're actually very thin and delicate, so they would burn really, really easily. I swear to God, do not put this in front of a south-facing window. Your Milano will fry up like a fritter. I keep my plant where it gets bright light all day, but the actual light from the window only touches it very first thing in the morning. It's got east facing light and it passes over it just because of the positioning of the plant. Within 5 minutes it's completely over the plant, so it's never getting a chance to burn it. And because it's the morning light, it's a lot gentler. And I would really never ever introduce it to more direct light than that. As a side note though, I know I said a lot about not giving it like direct light, but this is 100% not a low light plant. You need this to be in a bright space. It will not be happy in a low light like area at all. That's not its vibe. It's got to be a bright space, but low or extremely little direct light. The velvet actually also tells us something about what it likes with humidity. The velvety texture will actually hold a little bit of moisture and humidity close to the leaf without letting it escape, whilst actually creating a repellent for direct moisture. So it's taking in atmospheric humidity and holding it nicely and close to the leaf, but like rainfall or anything, none of that is able to sit on the leaf and cause bacteria or anything like that. But it does love to hold that humidity close to it. I know that it's got something that's helping it to hold onto that humidity, but that doesn't mean that it's doing it by itself. You still have to create a humid atmosphere for it to have the ability to actually absorb the humidity underneath these hairs, if that makes kind of sense. I have mine sitting at about 50% humidity and above. It's always better when it's like got 60% humidity. That's not always easy for me to maintain in my conditions. However, it seems perfectly happy at 50%. It has gone as low as 30%, but I wouldn't recommend that on the long term at all, because it definitely looked like, you know, when your skin is like thirsty and dehydrated, not like dry and peeling, but just like, it just looks dehydrated and tired. That was kind of the effect that the leaves had. And then they perked back up when I turned the humidity on. So something that you can do to help with humidity is, you know, use a humidifier, or you can use a grow tent or a grow cabinet if you have the means for any of those things. I don't actually have those things. I use a humidifier. You can also group it together with plants as well. That's very helpful because they kind of almost sort of sweat off some humidity around them and create like nice little ecosystem, which really helps. Some people talk about pebble trays. Trust me, that is not your friend in this situation. I personally don't actually think they work ever, but specifically with this, it's like, what, it's gonna maybe at best work up to here, but like, you know, this is a tall growing plant. The humidity is never going to reach that high. So I'm kind of thinking humidifier is your option really. Or if your bathroom's big, keep it in a bathroom. Heat is the next thing. If you're going to fail in any of the areas, this is the one it's going to forgive you in, trust me, because this winter my heating went out and this one kind of managed. I did what I could to create a heated area. I had kind of seeding mats and heat mats and that sort of thing around it. But I will say it never really got higher than 17 degrees. I wouldn't advise going lower than that ever. I think that's the kind of minimum you can get away with, certainly on a long term. It always does a little bit better when it's warmer. It kind of just generally perks up and starts activating. I would say if you keep your heat like around 20 and above, then it's probably going to be really happy. Straight from heat into water. This is not one of those philodendrons that you can just let dry out. It likes moisture. You can never let it fully dry out. I would say water it little and often. That's kind of my route with it, so that it doesn't get too soaked. I have it in very well draining soil. All philodendrons love well draining soil with lots of sort of cocoa, coir, perlite and orchid bark, and then some worm poop as well. I think if you're a bit of an underwaterer, you might want to mix some sphagnum in with that, some sphagnum moss as well, because that still has like a bit of airiness, but not too much. You don't want it to sort of like remain stodgy in there. Just something to just hold on a little bit, but while still being an airy texture, something where it can get a little bit of oxygen and movement of its roots. I have mine in terracotta because I am a serious overwaterer, especially once I like know that something likes a drink. Then I kind of just feel like I have to water it a bit more. So I kind of need something to counteract my need to water. Again, I would say if you are an underwaterer, then it's probably a good idea to keep it in plastic, unlike me, or some sort of self-watering system or something. This is just in terracotta because that is my failing as a plant parent, is overwatering, and I have to counteract that somehow. So terracotta seems to be doing the job for me. I use liquid gold leaf on this, on all of my collection in the summer. Now, I know that there are some people that say you should never ever fertilise in the winter, and there are some people conversely who say that if it's showing active signs of growth, then yeah, carry on fertilising. And I think that's cool as long as you definitely are using something organic, because they have extremely delicate root systems. You do not want to burn the roots on this. I'm not really ballsy enough to use something like liquid gold leaf in the winter, even very diluted. So I was using this kind of seaweed mix over the winter, which is a proprietary blend by Happy House Plants, and it seems to have been really good. I know this leaf is not all that, but I kind of feel that's much more to do with external factors other than the fertilizer, because these leaves here were going to be epic. Okay, toxicity. Let's talk, because this, like all philodendrons, is toxic to humans and animals. It has calcium oxalates in it. Depending on the amount that the creature ingests and sort of how big the creature is, it can make them extremely sick and even cause potential death. That's bad. But the added problem with this is that this plant has extrafloral nectaries, which produces this very sticky, sweet sap. And when you see it on the leaves, it kind of looks a little bit like it might be sort of a pest or something, this sort of sticky, shiny stuff on the leaves. But when you see it on the stems, it's sort of quite clear it's coming from within the plant, and it's these beads of sticky sap. And the plant does this because it's trying to attract beneficial insects for either pollination or for protection against herbivorous insects. I mean, I've not tasted it, but it looks like if a child got a taste of it, they might think, oh, yum, mum's given me like a nice lollipop, yay. Or like the dog might think you've like happily just found a new dog snack for it. They would happily chomp into this sort of delightfully sugary sweet sap, and that makes it kind of all the more dangerous, because I don't think most philodendrons actually taste sweet when they are ingested. Speaking of pollination, this is actually a flowering plant, but when I looked at the official scientific description of this plant, it said inflorescence unknown, which I thought was kind of weird. And then I went looking for Philodendron melanochrysum flowers and inflorescence, and I tried every search term and I couldn't find any. I could just see like pictures of Philodendron melanochrysums with bromeliads and them sort of saying, oh look, flowers and melanochrysums, but not actually the flowers on this. So I don't know what they look like, and I would love to know what they look like, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to flower in my home somehow. So if anyone knows where there's like a link of a flowering melanochrysum, please drop it in the comments below, because I really want to see it. I hope I have been able to provide some sort of help and advice on what to do and what not to do with your Philodendron melanochrysum in a normal home environment. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment if you've got any suggestions for other videos you'd like to see, or any comments on this video, and subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell if you want to see more. Cheerio.